Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, HOA tried to take away my farm and sue me, I never joined the HOA to begin with. Don't mess with a farmer. I come from generations of farmers in my home of South Africa. I've been watching over the years as modern buildings and neighborhoods have popped up, taking over precious farmland. I hate to see it happen, but I know that it is just a normal part of life. However, when this takeover of neighborhoods and their HOAs started to affect my life and property, I realized just how bad it really was. I ended up having my adjacent land purchased by a large neighborhood contracting company. It took about a year for them to have the first few houses up, and it was only a matter of time before people started moving in and their soul-sucking HOA board became established. My home and property are clearly not part of their neighborhood, land or jurisdiction, but boy, was it only a few weeks before someone was knocking on my door. There was a woman and a man dressed nicely with a leather folder of papers. They seemed professional and like they wanted to talk business. I was not interested in what they were selling though. These individuals introduced themselves as 2 of 5 HOA board members, the woman being the leader of the group. They wanted to discuss purchasing my large 10-acre field that was south of their neighborhood. I, of course, told them no. They were not happy to hear that and pursued the issue for several more minutes until I firmly stated that it was not going to happen. With a forced face, the woman nicely said that it was my wish and she would be available if I changed my mind. I could tell that she was fuming on the inside, but she managed to hold it together pretty well. I thought that nothing else would really come from the issue, so I was surprised when I received a letter in the mail from the HOA board. They were claiming that my property was extending beyond the actual property line and that I would have to shorten it by about 5 acres. At the time, all I could think about was how that could not be possible, and I was certainly right. It is not possible. I ignored their letters, and by the end of the week I had another letter, this time more threatening and actually mentioning legal action. I'm not very good at understanding the law. I have always kept to myself and never assumed I'd be in a position where I needed a lawyer. Did I need a lawyer? I was not even sure what to do. So I called my friend Steve, who was willing to help me out. He worked for his father's law firm for years and almost became a lawyer before he found his passion in carpentry. Steve told me the best thing to do is to just ignore them. They had no jurisdiction and I knew where my property line ended. I needed his advice and disregarded their letters, and after about the 6th or 7th one that I threw in the trash, I started to realize that they were coming more often. Whoever was writing these letters was a certified crazy person. The intimidation tactics were ridiculous and they even threatened with authorities. I just had a hard time even believing that people can be this crazy and entitled. They said that I was part of the HOA, I never signed anything, and that I had to follow the rules and other stuff that was just weird and impossible. This HOA felt like they were owed the courtesy of my land because they had money to throw at me and I was apparently some dumb farmer. Well, I will show them what happens when they mess with me. My son gave me a great idea one day. He said that I should build a compost pile by the entrance of the neighborhood. I know that he was joking, but I genuinely think that it is perfect. Not only would I build 1 compost pile, but I would build 2. I started just working on the project right away. I grabbed up the straw, leaves, scraps from my kitchen compost bin and old vegetables from the garden. I needed way more than this to build something substantial though, so I started having my friends, family and non-HOA neighbors bring their compost scraps and toss them in the pile. It even became a thing that people stopped by for over a week-long period. Compost piles are not that fast to put together. Not to mention the chicken poop that my chicken farmer neighbor brought by. The 2 piles popped up faster than I could imagine with my friend's help, and it did not take any time before I heard from the HOA about it. They sent a very colorful letter stating that the compost piles were grounds for suing me, that they were a disturbance to the entire neighborhood. My revenge was not going to stop there. I decided that I would keep going until they finally left me alone. There was another large field that I owned that had issues with flooding, so I rarely planted any crops that far back. It faced the rear of the neighborhood, and she had hinted about wanting to purchase that area of land so they could continue to expand for more houses. At least that is what she said at the first schmooze meeting she tried to pull off. My son and I and many of his friends have enjoyed collecting and shooting guns. We don't really hunt because we cannot stand the idea of shooting an animal even for sport or necessity. He had been talking with me for the last 2 years about opening up a gun range in the back of the property, the part that floods and I don't use for crops. He wanted to level it and build up an office and gun range, probably opening it to the public once we got all the paperwork ready. I figured with all of this HOA nonsense going on and their constant harassment, it was as good as time as any to start the process of opening up the gun range business. It was a chunk of change for me and my son to put down right away, but it ended up being incredibly lucrative in the long run. But let me say that the HOA was pissed. I mean, if this woman could burn me and my house to the ground, she probably would. After just 24 hours of us using the gun range, it was not even really built yet either, we were just shooting, she came tearing down the road to my property in her nice Mercedes and was absolutely fuming again. I could not help but laugh at her red face and screwed up hair as she tried to use her intimidation tactics on me. When she realized that her yelling and belligerent being was not going to get her anywhere, she started a new tactic of crying on my front porch. I decided to close the door in her face, to which I could then hear her shouting and kicking my door. She carried on for several minutes before leaving, eventually breaking a pot I had on the porch and kicking some of my flower beds over. I thought about being petty and calling the cops for her destroying my belongings, but it was not worth the trouble. I then proceeded to continue opening up the gun range to the public. The local gun club even decided to host their meetings there. Not only does the gun range make a lot of noise, disturbing the crappy HOA, sorry to the residents I guess, but it is also making me quite a bit of money. It is even going to allow me to retire early from farming. I might end up selling my property one day, but it is definitely not going to be this crappy HOA and its spoiled brat of a board leader. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, when I first read this story, I was sort of surprised to hear that HOAs also exist in South Africa. Sometimes I'm really curious if there are any other countries as well that have these sort of HOAs, although in this case it really is called an HOA in South Africa, and if we could find stories about these crazy HOAs from other countries somewhere, because I gotta say, it was not very easy to find this story in the first place. Either way, if you enjoy the HOA stories, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video, since that would help my channel out tremendously. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled Tenant Revenge. So you be the judge of whether this is pro-revenge or petty revenge. Unlike my past post, the stakes here are small, but it was done in a professional context, which is my job. I own and manage several mid-size multifamily rental properties, apartment blocks. I am very hands-on and I deal with most day-to-day issues as well as the investment side. Great returns this way. I choose most of the tenants personally and most of them are great people. They appreciate my hands-on work and the fact that I love my job and strive to provide the customer service that a good hotel would. However, there are some exceptions. One of my tenants is a charming young woman with a good job, friendly and easygoing demeanor, and a total douchebag boyfriend. It was a 6-month battle to get him on the lease since he lives there full time now and from what I see does not contribute to rent. Not my problem though, until I get a call from him, politely, odd, he is not usually polite, saying he clogged the toilet and asks if I can call a plumber or fix it before his girlfriend gets home. Happy that he's being polite, I went on over and was there in 20 minutes. It turned out that he had dropped a bottle of hair gel into the bowl and for some reason flushed it. It was jammed in the P-trap of the bowl and just out of sight but within reach. I got on my elbow gloves, reached in and pulled it out. He stood watching me with this scumbag Steve smirk on his face. I suggested that next time he just reach in and grab it himself before calling me. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I don't reach into other people's toilets, dude. I'm going to school, so I don't have to touch other people's crap." I told him, "You'd be surprised how much that pays though. Your bill will be in the mail." I went home, called 3 plumbing contractors and asked them each what their emergency service rate was. The average was $180 for the first 45 minutes flat. I sent a bill to scumbag tenant for $180. Of course, he refused to pay. I filed a dispute at the tenancy office and included my evidence that the 3 quotes I had received. I got my judgment today, which was $180 plus the $50 filing fee. A LL is allowed to charge market rate to repair damage that a tenant causes intentionally or through negligence. Now he knows that. Next time he will reach into the toilet himself. All he had to do was keep his dumb mouth shut and I would have fixed his problem for free. The next one is titled Easy Revenge. Years ago, I worked as a truck driver, even owned my own trucks for a while. One of the companies I used to trip lease to had several different divisions. I called them up one day to see if they had fright. I was told they could not load me till I talked to Joe, not his real name. Joe was in charge of safety, which includes driver records. Little background on Joe, he is an a-hole. He played favorites to the guys who worked out of the same terminal as he did. He and I went around and round a few times. Backstory: I called him up and he won't tell me anything on the phone, says I have to come see him in person and they cannot load me till I do. I blew him off since I had about 15 other companies I was trip leasing to at the time. Fast forward a week, I happened to be in the area on personal business and I stop in to see him. He is especially nice, which should have tipped me off that something was up. He keeps me waiting about 20 minutes and finally get to talk to him. Tells me he cannot load me because my license was under suspension. Tell him I'll take care of it, go out to get in the car, and just as I leave the property, I get pull over. The guy set me up and that was why he kept me waiting 20 minutes. Gave the state police time to get there. So they arrested me and took me to jail on a Friday evening. Did not get to see the magistrate till Monday. I paid my fines, paid my reinstatement fees and went on my way. Now I realized that it was my fault for not paying the fine and to be honest, I got 3 tickets that day. When I mailed them in 2 weeks later, I missed one of them. At that time, I was working pretty much 7 days a week. All my mail, not that there was much of it, was going to my brother's house. My brother failed to let me know he had mail there from the state. Joe could have simply told me about it so I could have taken care of it, but no, Joe got me arrested. I sat on this for 8 or 9 years, and one day I am out in the truck and see one of their trucks from Joe's terminal. I get on the CB radio and call out to him. Me: "Hey ABC Trucking, you got your radio on?" ABC: "Go ahead." Me: "Does Joe still work there?" ABC: "Yeah, he does. Why?" Me: "That dude got me screwed a while back. Tell him I have not forgotten about him." ABC: "No kidding? What did he do to you?" Me: "Cannot tell you. It could possibly reveal my identity. But you tell that guy that I know where he lives and I know where his wife shops. I even know where his daughters go to college. I even know where they sleep at night. Tell him he's screwed with the wrong person." ABC: "I'll pass it on." I keep this routine up every time I saw one of their trucks, and about the 4th one I ran into told me that Joe was really scared. He pulled his girls out of college, would not let them or his wife go anywhere without an escort. He was driving different vehicles to work and made his wife change her shopping habits all the time. I pretty much completely disrupted their lives. The next truck I saw, I told him to tell Joe that having his daughters and wife escorted around was not going to help him. Pretty much I kept him running scared on and off for 2 years or so. I always took information one driver would give me and use it in my next conversation with another driver. So that way Joe thought someone was always watching him, even though I had not seen him since the day he got me arrested. I did find out that he became less of an a-hole after that. And yeah guys, I gotta say, that definitely takes some dedication to do. However, I'm curious, do you think that OP went too far in this story, or do you think that it was appropriate? Let us know what you think in the comments. And the next one is titled Awful Landlords. Background: I'm a real estate developer and investor, and I own and manage several mid-size multi-family rental properties. I am aggressive with rent, but I love the construction side of the business and take great pride in keeping my properties in excellent condition. I also ensure my staff provides top-notch customer service. I never understood why property managers don't have the same attitude towards customer service as hoteliers. Anyways, one of my friends lives in a building owned by a very traditional landlord. A grumpy old lady bangs on the door to collect rent every month, things don't get fixed unless you threaten to file a dispute, and in general everything is fixed as cheaply as possible. My friend called me last week and said her fire alarm has been going off since 3 AM. Not the fire alarm actually, but the warning tone on the annunciator panel. This is the device that receives inputs from heat detectors, smoke detectors, etc. all around the building and monitors and provides power and battery backups. This panel was apparently detecting a fault and sounding the warning tone. This is not the fire alarm, but it sounds like a loud smoke detector going off. It cannot be silenced until it is serviced. In my buildings they occasionally do go off every few years, and as with everything else, my staff must attend within half an hour, and in this case appropriate action would be to call the fire safety contractor for an emergency service call. My friend's landlord informed her that the contractor had been called, but it was not an emergency, so they would be there in 4 days. 4 days of this alarm going off 24/7 constantly. No sleep for anyone. This was likely to avoid the overtime surcharge for an emergency service, which is about $150, but the manager was kind enough to wrap the panel in several towels with packing tape to slightly muffle the alarm. He made a half-hearted attempt to silence it by pulling the leads off the backup battery. Since the device is hardwired, this just doubled the frequency of the alarm to include a backup battery warning. I grabbed the panel keys and went over to see if I could help my friend out. I was able to open the panel since I have keys for my own, and they are the same. The battery leads had been pulled off, but the main one was still connected, so the beeper was going off like crazy. The manager did not know enough to turn off the breaker in the electrical room, and I could not access it. The manager did not answer the phone, and upon opening the panel, I saw immediately why it had been failing on and off for years. According to my friend, the batteries were 10 years out of date, and the leads on the terminals were blackened. It looked like the landlord had been swapping out the old batteries with new ones for the yearly inspection and then putting the old ones back in and maybe returning the new batteries for a refund. Now I realized why the service call was scheduled so late, so the landlord could get some temporary new batteries put in time. Now, I'm a licensed property manager but not an electrician, so it would be unethical for me to remove the hot lead from the bus bar and silence the alarm, but low voltage wiring is a different story. Unfortunately, my insulated screwdriver slipped as I was tightening the battery lead pack on, and I accidentally bridged the hot side of the bus bar with the low voltage side of the circuit board. Luckily, my eyes were averted to avoid arcing injury. 120 volts right to the control board. Ouch, a big flash, breaker tripped somewhere, and then silence. The circuit board was toast. The service tech would have to install a new panel with new batteries. My friend contacted the landlord and reported that something bad happened and the panel was silenced. Also, did he intend to provide a 24-hour fire watch until such time as the fire alarm system is fully functional as required by Section 6 of the Fire Code? He affirmed that he did not and that she could F off. Her next call was to the Assistant Chief Fire Inspector, since she happened to have his business card handy. His response was much more gracious. He was happy to provide the necessary fire watch and contacted the landlord to inform him of the fact. The firemen's union is a strong one, and their hourly rate for emergency services like this one are comparable to a midtown Manhattan law firm. I am told the bill reached $3,000 before the landlord called the service tech to replace the annunciator panel. I would like to say he also paid the $5,000 fine, but I understand he is fighting that in court. In the meantime, the building sleeps peacefully with a fully functional and up-to-date fire alarm. And yeah, ripe stars, if there is one thing that I really despise, it is the so-called landlords from hell that are too cheap for anything and everything, and especially don't fix anything when it is really needed. If you ever had any experiences with awful landlords, then please feel free to share your own stories either in the comments or on r/ripe stories on Reddit. And yeah, ripe stars, unfortunately we have reached the end of the video, but fortunately that means you get to see more of Disney. Disney in her room, and I think she is a little bit hungry. Like, we bought her, I think it's like imported American cat food, and a lot of people recommend this one because it's apparently like very healthy, but it also makes the cats like grow pretty quick, so I hope that's like a good one. But my girlfriend said it's pretty expensive, and a lot of cat owners here in Thailand are using that stuff. Yeah, you can watch her eat. Very cute. So yeah, if you got any cats of your own, let me know in the comments what kind of cat food are you feeding your cats? And what kind of cat snacks can you recommend? I would really appreciate some good advice, because I think most of the things that you find in Europe or in the US you can also find in Thailand, because they import a lot. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I see you again soon. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.